People ask me, what? You're moving into HR? Why would you want to do that? And I knew that from an HR perspective, we had the most amazing opportunity. And here we are now, some 12 years later, and I think all of us recognize just how important leadership and culture and driving transformation is. And a lot of that starts with our people. And so if you allow me today, what I'm going to talk to you about is how Cisco views transformation, the changes that we've made, and a bit of the journey that we've been on as a company as well. So I want to show you some amazing newspaper articles. So look at these headlines here for a moment. Your best bet is your HR team. Transformation through HR. Are these impressive headlines? If you're in HR, they absolutely are. Now, I will confess to you that I made these up. And so these are not actually from newspapers, but they can be. And there's such an amazing opportunity that we have, and this is the aspiration that I think all of us have to truly transform our companies and to really lead around new people practices within our industry. And it's fascinating to me because regardless of industry, whether you're a bank or whether you're in agriculture, whether you're a technology company, we're all technology companies that are trying to transform very rapidly. And so if you allow me, what I'm going to do now is tell you a little bit about the HR journey at Cisco. And I'll start by just acknowledging, think about the history of the human resource organization. What did it start with? It started with compliance and policy and governance. This is the phase that I call the police. So from an HR perspective, we started with the gate. What are the things that we can do, what we can't do? And then we started to evolve. And then we started talking about things like personnel management. We started talking about human resources. But now what do we talk about? We're talking about leadership. We're talking about culture. We're talking about organization. And most importantly, we're talking about how you can use these things to really accelerate your overall business strategy. So as I mentioned, what I'd love to do now is tell you a little bit about the Cisco HR story. And I'll be honest with you, it started from a place of challenge. And if we could advance a slide, here we go, excellent. We were very honest with ourselves when we started on this journey, which was about 3.5 years ago. And at the time, we really felt that we were not innovating as an HR function. We felt that some of our talent processes, they were a little bit stale. There were challenges that we had in the business that were very significant, but the solutions were not very clear for us. And my team, we refer to this as the no era. And we felt that as a team, we said no a lot. And after saying no many, many times, you may get a yes, which is very good. But we had big challenges. And these are the challenges that I think we're all struggling with. We were struggling with performance management. We knew that the system that we had was not a good one. We had at the time traditional ratings, and our employees didn't feel like we were focusing on their development. They didn't feel that the performance rating was leading to the most meaningful performance management discussions. We were struggling too with silos, and we needed to move faster in everything that we were doing. We were also wanting our company to be as innovative as we could be, but the realization was that until we started to innovate our people practices, we couldn't necessarily make this real for us. And so what we did was we moved out of the no zone, and we started to look at, okay, first, how do we rethink the experience from a client perspective, and how do we focus on the business outcomes that are the most meaningful? I'll give you an example. Again, whatever industry you are, what you want within your company is you want the next big idea to come from anywhere in the organization. And you realize that some of the best ideas, they're not going to come from the top of the organization. They're going to come from the bottom of the organization. So that means that you have to start to think about, how do I drive to that outcome? How do I change everything that I'm doing to enable that bottoms-up innovation as a company? The second thing we had to do was really look at, how do you integrate your people planning into your business strategy? They're not two different things. They're all the same motion. Once you understand where you're going as a company, how do you then embed your people and your organization and your culture to truly enable that success? And then lastly, and I'll tell you that sometimes I think this was the hardest one, how do you drive agility in your HR team? And by the way, I think that goes for every team. How do you drive agility? And then how do you start to challenge the status quo? And especially when you are coming from a place of hesitancy and caution as an organization. So we started to create a new term within my organization. And the term was, let's break HR. And the reason that we started to do that was we wanted to challenge ourselves to think about our function in a very different way. And it's funny, the first time we talked about breaking HR, I think the team thought, oh my goodness, what did we do wrong? Why are we trying to break our function? But there was a mindset shift that started, which was, let's challenge everything we do, and let's be okay with what we learn. And so one of the biggest things that we did in our journey, I'll highlight one that I think was a big part of our evolution as an HR team, was we had a hackathon. Now, I know that you're thinking HR can't have a hackathon, but you can. Any function can have a hackathon. We leveraged our technology. We came together over 39 countries. In a 24-hour period, we looked at what we could change within HR. And the coolest thing was we engaged the business. And we said, what are those things about HR and people that you want to change? And together, we actually came out with 105 ideas. But again, I think the biggest thing for us was setting aside a day to focus on what we could change. And there was something really powerful about the 105 ideas. There was a theme that really just carried through all of them. And that theme was, we were actually trying, without saying it, to intersect technology and the human touch. And what I mean by that is we were trying to intersect technology, but yet make the experience more personal. And sometimes I think that's counterintuitive. What we learned is that our people and our teams believed that there was something magical there. And I'll give you an example of how we did this. Today at Cisco, we leverage a technology called TeamSpace. And every week, every single employee at Cisco, at least we ask them to, check in. And what they do is they share their priorities for the week. They share what they loved and what they loathed from the previous week. And they share on a scale of 1 to 5 the level of impact that they've had. And by the way, this is on a mobile app. And so you share this, and your manager looks at it, and your manager can comment. Now, I know you're thinking, wouldn't a conversation just be equally important? What we're finding, and the research has shown us, that having this common and frequent touch point, talking about the business priorities, but then having this moment to say, tell me, what did you love and what did you loathe, creates a connection that's incredibly powerful and truly allows us to enable this personal human touch through technology. And that's just one example that really came from the breakathon around the things that we could change and improve. After the hackathon that we had, we then started to get very clear on our differentiation. And I think this is so important for every single company. Think a moment about your company. What does your company look like on a great day? And when you answer that question, it starts to guide you around how you are differentiated from other companies. For us at Cisco, what we realized that our differentiation was going to be things like, we're one company where you can have many careers. In the same way that I moved around the company, we want that for every employee. We want them to have the ability to have multiple careers under the Cisco roof, if you will. We are differentiated because of our inclusive mindset. Every person has a voice at the table. By the way, that's powerful when you think about bottoms-up innovation. You want every person to feel that way. We're going to be a company that is not one size fits all, but one size fits one. And what that means is we're going to have to customize what we do. Now, we have 70,000 employees, so that does not mean that we have 70,000 performance management systems. But what it means is that once we understand the business, we may opt to do things in a few different ways because that makes us better. And so these were some of the elements that truly differentiated us. And what that led to was clarity around those projects that would take us forward. And I'll hit upon a few of these because I think these are bigger trends for us from an industry perspective. One thing that was so important for us was to start to build something called the Talent Cloud. I think all of us are trying to make our talent a lot more fluid. I love the concept of a liquid workforce where you're able to move to the next critical body of work. I laugh a little bit. I don't know if you experience this too, but in San Jose, sometimes employees will come up to me and ask me, I love my job. Is there a chance that I could have a second job? Think about that concept. What it shows is that the future of work is making people look at work in very different ways. They're wondering if they can have the flexibility to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And it's a very different focus for us. So as an HR function, what we have to do is get very clear to understand what are the skills and the capabilities of the 70,000 people we have, and how do we help them move in a way that is beneficial for the business and for their careers? And how do we help them understand where to invest their time as it relates to learning and development? And that's a great example of where we want a one-size-fits-one approach. Another key body of work for us was really around building overall team success. Cisco made a big bet about 2 years ago that our business results were largely based on our teams and how our teams worked together and the work that they did. And we also realized that the culture and connection within a team really had tremendous impact on the business. And so that's another key project that we have here as well. I think we all recognize that when we impact the culture, we truly change the company. And there are times where you have to change the culture to really then allow the business transformation that you're driving towards. And I thought I would share with you some of the trends that are out there in the marketplace as it relates to talent. So we know in the marketplace, when we look at focus, we see more and more companies focusing not as much on the individual, but on teams. And we can talk a little bit more in the Q&A around the analytics that we're building around teams and understanding where we have the most productive and effective teams within a company. We see the focus moving away from roles and moving towards work. And again, this is an element of the fluidity of what we're trying to drive. We feel that the org pyramid, and I'm going to show you this in just a moment, is going away because it doesn't reflect how we actually work on a day-to-day basis. And what you see instead is you see networks that are incredibly fluid in how they change and they move. We see us focus more and more on connections, and we see our language changing from management to leadership. And the realization is that for the business transformation to occur, we truly need leaders to push through that as well. So I'm going to show you something kind of interesting. This here is the new focus that we have at Cisco. Our talent strategy is based on 3 key areas. So we will always focus on the individuals and ensuring that each person has the ability to grow and develop, to have purpose, to have a meaningful career. But then we're going to focus on teams. And we're going to focus on the analytics that help us to understand how every team at Cisco can be a world-class team. And then we're going to focus on something called the team of teams. And this is really what dynamic teams look like in all of our companies. And I think something that we're all trying to push forward on is not having silos that impact the overall business results. And the focus on how you lead organizations and lead cross-functional teams It's a critical part of our talent strategy. Okay, so how many of you have this picture somewhere on your desk, what your organization chart looks like? Right? This is the standard organization chart. It starts with the leader at the top. You have all the teams. Is this how you work? No. We work in a very fluid way, and in fact, the people that we work with can change on an ongoing basis. Yet, all of our talent management processes, everything that we've done, they're built around this world, which is fascinating for us. And by the way, a reason that I think the work that all of us are doing in this room is some of the most amazing work that's going on today. So if this is not the right picture of what an organization looks like, what does it look like? Let me show you. So this is my organization at Cisco. This is the HR function at Cisco. Every dot within this network is an individual. The different colors represent the different teams. The people at the center of this circle are the people that are the most networked within HR. These are the folks that are working across many, many teams. Those circles that you see on the outside of the circle, those are teams that are working with each other and not as much with the rest of the function. This is the new world. This is how we work. We now have visibility to the touch points within an organization. Whenever I share this picture, the first question that I get is, well, where are you, Fran? And let me show you. I'm that tiny little orange dot in the center. And what you'll see is I'm not the biggest dot. So I'm not the most networked person within the organization. And you will see that I have connections, thank goodness, but I'm not the most connected person either. And that's really important because in this new world, my role as a leader, I'm in service to the 800 dots that you see here. My dot is not separate. My dot is not at the top of the chart. My dot will move around based on how I'm working on a day-to-day basis. But we believe that this is the future. And now everything that we do has to be geared around how do you support this movement? How do you make this world more simple? How do you ensure that you get the best performance within this type of organization? And this is really the work that we're doing. Now, I'll tell you something really fascinating. We just mapped the team in Argentina. And so Juan Pablo, for the first time, saw how his team is working across the teams. And what's so interesting about that is that there's not a right and a wrong. There's an understanding of how you're working, and there's a great dialogue around, do we want to work differently and why? And that's really the power of this work. But in order for this work to be the most effective, what it really requires is that we have leaders that are ready to lead in this digital era and ready to try things in a very different way. We did something very interesting at Cisco. We went out to our leaders across the company and we said, who are your best teams? Who are those teams that if you had more teams like that, your business would grow? And the business identified 97 teams. We studied those teams, and then we studied a group of 200 other teams. And what we found was that there was a difference between those two teams. What you see in front of you, this is the research that has led us to understand what best leaders look like. And so the first thing that I'll highlight to you is that what you see here is that we're focusing on outcomes. And this is really important because we're not going to tell our people how to do things. We're going to tell them what outcome we're driving for, and we're going to trust them to do it in a way that's authentic and in a way that is meaningful for them, because we know that's how we're the most impactful. The other thing that you'll see here is this concept of the best of we and the best of me. And the understanding that there are things that we can do to get the best out of our teams, and that there's things that we can do to get the best out of the individuals. And when I share this, I always laugh because I don't think there's anything shocking here. These are things that we know. And at Cisco, what we've done is we've really put all of this into action. And so what you see here is this realization that for us to be at our best from a team perspective, our people need to understand purpose. They have to be enthusiastic about the mission of the company. And guess what? If you're a leader at Cisco, that's your job. We have to focus on excellence and ensure that people understand, what does it mean to win? How do we win together as a team? We have to create the environment of safety and trust. And again, I go back to this concept of, if you want your team to act like entrepreneurs, you have to create the environment where they feel comfortable taking risk. And that's why this is a key area of focus for us as well. And then we have to ensure that our teams have confidence in the future and understand how we're going to work. And so those are the things that we do from a team perspective. And then from an individual perspective, people want to know, do I understand what's expected of me? Will I be recognized when I do great work? Will I be challenged to grow? And so this is really the foundation of everything that we're doing. And what we have found is, since we've started this work, for our best teams, we see that they are 13% more engaged. We see that our best teams hold on to talent 2.7% more, or 2.7x more than rest of the teams. And we see that the confidence in the strategy of the company continues to grow. And so this is a really interesting example around how some of the analytics and understanding our teams is truly driving our behavior. And all of this work led us to do something a little bit crazy. So on September 28th, we actually had something called Leader Day. And we trained about 8,400 employees over a 24-hour period. And we leveraged our technology around the globe. Now, you may be wondering, why did you do that over 24 hours? Why wouldn't you just kind of stagger that over a month? As leaders, there's something so important about the signals that we put forward. And taking all of our leaders offline for one day told our employees, leadership is important. Leadership is critical. It's something we absolutely believe in. And so we started the day in Beijing and in Singapore. We kicked off with a keynote discussion, and then those 8,400 people broke into groups of 10 and started to wrestle with some real business issues for the full day. And we came out of this day with our people giving the day an NPS score of 82, which is pretty phenomenal. But again, the reason that we did this was, for us as a company, for this transformation, one of the first things we had to do was to say, this is important. And one of the most important messages that we gave on this day was, when you look at our new outcomes, when you look at our expectations of leaders, if this is something that you're not inspired by, if this is something that you don't have a lot of energy for, then you probably shouldn't be a leader at Cisco. And that was a big step for us in our journey and really sharing how very important this was. And so for us, when we think about the digital transformation, when we think about the digital era, it starts with something so very simple, which is our leaders. And the belief for us is that from an HR perspective, we have the ability, together with our business partners, to truly lead this transformation. And we know that when we do, this headline will not be one that I've created, but something that we see, and something that we see commonly, and something that I think will be very natural for us. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Francine, that was so inspiring for me.
Thank you.
I have so many questions for you, but I'm going to start, and then we are going to ask the audience for some questions.
Good.
So please, your help. I will start with a question about your background and about your career, because I want to know you better, and I think that all of them want to. You have been at Cisco for 21 years, and you have a journey along several areas.
Yes.
Can you tell a little bit about that and how that journey has bring you and become the leader you are today in human resources?
Yes, the funniest part of my journey at Cisco is that it started with me showing up for the wrong interview. Okay. And the reason that I share this really funny story is that I do think there's something so powerful in our careers in trusting our gut and listening to that inner voice. And so the story goes, I'm in the interview, I realize I'm in the wrong interview. It's for a role that I am not qualified for. The role was a technical support agent, and I had no technical support training. So the first minute or two of the interview, I'm thinking, how do I get out of this interview? This is so strange. And then I was like, wow, there's something so cool about this company. I want this job, and I don't care that I'm not qualified on paper for it. And I just started fighting for the role, and I ended up getting the role, and that started a very fascinating career for me. And so I believe very strongly in the concept of one company, many careers. After that tech support role, I moved into operations, and I led operations in a few different areas of the business. I was fortunate enough to then move into mergers and acquisitions, which was one of the dream jobs that I had. It was so fascinating, and as I mentioned, when you're trying to do something with a tight timeline, with aggressive goals, at the end of the day, you realize it comes down to leadership in teams, and so that was compelling. I joined HR thinking it was a one-year rotation, and 2 years, and I realized I wasn't going anywhere. I loved it.
Well, that's very, very good, very funny. Okay, so what do you think? We heard about your journey, the transformation you have leading here in Cisco. What do you think was the biggest challenge for you as HR leader?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is that there's so many great ideas. There's so many opportunities. I think for us, when we had the breakathon, we really ignited the innovation of the HR organization, and that was really exciting. But there's a really significant body of work that you have to do around change management and the why. And as I look back on some of the work, I think we could have done a better job of partnering with the business on the why. And since that time, what I'll tell you is that we're leveraging a lot of design thinking and systems thinking with the business to ensure that whatever we deliver, it's theirs, it's not ours. And so that was a learning that we went through, especially as we were driving innovation.
Great. And you mentioned design thinking, and that brings me one question. In this digital era and this digital transformation, we are seeing that the profile of HR professionals is moving.
Yes.
So what is your insight? What do you think? What are the key skills and competencies that the professionals, HR professionals must have today?
Yeah, I'm completely biased, just so you know. I think this is one of the most exciting areas. I think the role of an HR leader is going to have a lot more consultancy than what we've seen before. I think that HR leaders will be consultants that are analyzing how we're doing from a business strategy perspective and then guiding the business strategically around what we need to do. There's also something else that's very fascinating. Because all of us are trying to transform, because all of us work in the digital era, and I think we share this, HR is now part of the sales motion.
Yes.
Because we have an opportunity to share with our customers, this is how we're transforming, this is how we're helping our employees. I think that's amazing for the function as well.
Okay, that's great. Okay, and how do you stay current? Because, again, you are very busy, you travel a lot, so how do you stay current?
So I think that's so important, and when you've had long tenure at a company, I think you actually have to work very hard to stay current. It's something that I take very seriously. It's something that makes me nervous sometimes too, like always stay on top. And so what I would say is spending time with customers I find to be incredibly helpful. Having a diverse team that brings in tremendous insights is another way that I do that. Having crazy things like a hackathon was another way because we're getting all of the best ideas and the thinking. Something that we plan to do is now we plan to do a hackathon with other HR organizations, other companies, to really start to go after some of the myths around people in the industry that we want to bust. And so that's something different, but I think it's staying connected to the themes. I think it's staying very close to the business, and that these are the things that keep you current.
Right, excellent. Okay. You mentioned diversity and during your presentation as well. I see that the companies are investing and very focused on that, but we still, in particular with women, and you are a woman in a leadership position, we still don't have enough women in executive positions. What is your position? What do you think we as a company can do to help that?
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest opportunities that we have. And it's funny, within Cisco, and as I talk to other companies, I think one of the things that we're doing is that when we hire from university, I think we're striving to hire a level of diversity that we probably don't have in the rest of the company. There's a lot of training that we're doing to help women continue to move. We were actually talking today about a program that we have at Cisco for women that are early in career. And what we have found is that when our women go through this program, we see their retention with the company increasing, and we see their promotion velocity increasing. And so what I would say is, what we can all see in the industry is the things that we have been doing, they haven't been working. And so when we find something that's working, we absolutely have to invest in it, and invest in it big, because it's important. Around the globe, we continually experiment and try new things. We have a project in India that's called Project Athena, where we bring women back into the industry, perhaps after having a family. And so there are a lot of efforts that we have at the moment. We're lucky. The Cisco board of directors is 40% women. Our leadership team under Chuck, our CEO, Chuck Robbins, is 40% women. And so what we're trying to do is the sandwich, which is we have great leadership at the top that's diverse. We're bringing in great talent that's diverse, and we're really pushing to ensure that we have this throughout the company.
Excellent. I will ask one more question and then open for the audience to see what they want to ask. In this transformation journey that you are living, we always learn from the experiences, but also we learn from what it doesn't go well.
Yes.
So can you share any initiative that doesn't go well, and how do you manage that?
Yes, my team's here, so I think they could probably give you some good insights around what hasn't gone well. So I'll give you two things. It was really important for us to reignite the innovation engine at Cisco within HR. And I think for a while we did live in the no. And we had to change that. However, what happened was when we changed that, we all started running in our own directions to innovate. And then there was a little bit of discipline that we had to put in place to ensure that what we were doing connected, and that the sequencing was right, and that we could explain these things, and that it wasn't too much for the business to take in at the same time. So that was one of the learnings that we had. The other learning I think that we had that was pretty powerful is that we were pushing technology out to the company, and we were focusing on the technology, which is good, but there's something beyond that, which is the why, and how this helps us change, and how this helps us to develop. And I think a little bit more time on the why would have made it easier for us as well. So those are two things that we've learned a lot from.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. There's any question from the audience? Very quiet. Here, Alejandra.
Either is fine. Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for sharing. I'm from Accenture.
Good.
I was very curious to see the slide when you discuss about agile organizations between the present and the future.
Yeah.
So how much do you already have deployed agile organization and agile teams in Cisco?
Yeah, it's really interesting. The agile team piece, I have to say, that part was very natural for us. And it actually happened before we were deliberate about it happening, because it was the way that we got things done as an organization. And there were organizations like IT, as an example, that was already moving away from roles to project teams. And they started to make the manager-employee relationship a little bit more fluid. And so that started already. So what we then had to do was say, hey, you know what, this is how we're working. So now what are the practices that we put in place to enable success? And if you're a leader within a team of teams environment where there's a dynamic team, how do you lead? How do you drive alignment? When you see perhaps that you have an organization that's not working with another organization and you know that's important, how do you address? And so this is some of the work, but I would tell you that the movement to agile teams was something that the business led because they had to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question?
Luis.
Luis.
Here we are a network of HR professionals. We are trying to learn from peers. We are learning how to learn between us. Any thought, any experience of learning from peers?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it was an important part of the journey for us. And so we very early on, and still to this day, meet with a lot of HR organizations. And the funniest thing is, it's partially learning and it's partially counseling because I think we recognize that we're dealing with the same issues regardless of industry, which has been incredibly helpful. For us at Cisco, we're lucky in that we have these executive business sessions where we actually have leaders from various companies coming in, and it becomes an opportunity for us to talk and to experiment. By the way, this is why for us, that next hackathon that I mentioned, we're going to do it with our peers in the industry. Because we think that some of the changes that occur, I don't think you can do it company by company. A great example of that is going back to the diversity discussion. You can have a company put in great practices, but you have an employee that leaves and goes to another company, and their experience is so very different. And so I think there are areas where we can change industries, we can change HR, and I think we do that with one another, and that can be very powerful. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And I jump in with exactly with a question about that. What about educational programs? Because we have unemployment in one hand, and we have the need to fulfill open positions in the other, and it seems that it will be, or it is, a gap in the skills. So what can we contribute?
Yeah, I think there's a tremendous role for us here. There's something very concerning that is going on at the moment, and that is work is changing faster than people. And you find yourself in these places where the work has shifted and the people haven't. And when that happens, it's not good for the company, it's not good for the individual. I do think there's a huge, huge opportunity we have. I think there's an accountability that we have from an HR perspective to help understand the business strategy and where it's going, and then prepare our employees and help our employees develop the skills and capabilities that they need to be relevant. And I think that's probably one of the most strategic things that we have to do in HR. The challenge is we're not doing it across the board because it's really, really hard. It's not something that's easy. It's not something that's plug and play. I think across companies, we're trying to figure out the lightest way, with the least amount of touch and challenge to understand the skills and capabilities of the people we have, and then to help our managers understand, and then this is where skills are going, and how do we help our people get there. It's a huge opportunity for us, and something that, of course, we're focused on at Cisco.
Great. Thank you, Francine.
Yeah, of course.
Any other question? No, they are very shy. Puede ser en español la pregunta y la traducimos, si alguien quiere. No? Okay. So, Francine, it was an honor to have you here and to share in your experience and what are you doing at Cisco. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been lovely to be here. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Francine. Gracias, Cecilia.